The night air was thick with an eerie stillness as I, Joseph, a 27-year-old adventurer, found myself driving through the winding roads of Pennsylvania's endless mountains. Little did I know that this journey would become a nightmare that would haunt me for the rest of my days. It was supposed to be a simple camping trip, a chance to escape the hustle and bustle of city life and reconnect with nature. But as the full moon rose over the dense forest, casting long shadows across my path, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The first sign of trouble came when my car's engine sputtered and died, leaving me stranded on a lonely stretch of road miles from the nearest town. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. With no cell phone signal and no other choice, I grabbed my backpack and flashlight, deciding to hike to the nearest campground I had spotted on my map earlier. The forest loomed before me, a wall of darkness that seemed to swallow the beam of my flashlight. As I ventured deeper into the woods, the trees seemed to close in around me, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. The moonlight filtered through the canopy, creating shifting patterns on the forest floor that played tricks on my eyes. That's when I heard it, a low, guttural growl that sent shivers down my spine. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest as I frantically scanned the surrounding darkness. The growl came again, closer this time, followed by the snap of a twig. I ran. Branches whipped at my face as I tore through the underbrush, blind panic driving me forward. The sound of heavy footfalls and ragged breathing filled my ears, but I couldn't tell if it was my own or something else's. Suddenly, I burst into a small clearing, the moonlight illuminating a scene that would be forever seared into my memory. There, in the center of the clearing, stood a creature straight out of my worst nightmares. It was massive, easily 7 feet tall, with a body that was a horrifying amalgamation of man and wolf. Coarse, matted fur covered its muscular frame, and its hands ended in razor-sharp claws that glinted in the moonlight. But it was the face that truly terrified me, a twisted, elongated snout filled with yellowed fangs, and eyes that glowed with an otherworldly hunger. Our gazes locked, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, with a bone-chilling howl that echoed through the mountains, the werewolf lunged at me. I dove to the side, feeling the rush of air as its claws barely missed my back. Scrambling to my feet, I ran again, this time with renewed desperation. The werewolf's howls filled the night, seeming to come from all directions at once. As I ran, my mind raced with fragments of local legends I had dismissed as mere folklore. Stories of hikers gone missing, of strange howls echoing through the mountains on full moon nights. Now faced with the terrifying reality, I cursed my own skepticism. The chase seemed to go on for hours, though it was probably only minutes. My lungs burned and my legs felt like lead, but the sound of the creature crashing through the undergrowth behind me kept me moving. Just when I thought I couldn't run any further, I spotted a glimmer of hope. A dilapidated cabin nestled among the trees. With the last of my strength, I sprinted towards it, praying that it would offer some form of sanctuary. I burst through the rotting door, slamming it shut behind me and frantically searching for something to barricade it. An old wooden table served the purpose, and I shoved it against the door just as the werewolf slammed into it from the outside. The cabin shook with the impact, dust and debris raining down from the ceiling. I backed away, my eyes darting around the single room for any kind of weapon. An old fireplace poker leaned against the wall, and I snatched it up, holding it before me like a sword. The werewolf's claws tore at the door, splinters flying as it tried to force its way in. I could hear its heavy breathing, smell its rank animal odor. Each impact made the table shift a little more, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it broke through. As I stood there, trembling and waiting for the inevitable, my eyes fell upon something I hadn't noticed before. A trap door in the floor, partially hidden beneath a moldy rug. Without hesitation, I flung the rug aside and yanked open the trap door, revealing a dark hole beneath. Just as I lowered myself into the opening, the cabin door finally gave way with a thunderous crash. I caught a glimpse of the werewolf's massive form filling the doorway before I dropped into the darkness below, pulling the trap door shut above me. I found myself in a narrow tunnel, the earthen walls close on either side. The sound of the werewolf's fury echoed from above, and I knew I had only moments before it discovered my escape route. Clutching the fireplace poker, I began to crawl through the tunnel, having no idea where it led, but knowing that anywhere was better than where I had been. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning beneath the forest floor. My knees and hands were raw from crawling, and the musty air made it difficult to breathe. But the sounds of pursuit drove me onward, the werewolf's howls growing more distant as I put more distance between us. Finally, after what felt like hours, I saw a faint glimmer of light ahead. Hope surged through me as I quickened my pace, emerging from the tunnel into a small cave opening on the side of a cliff. The full moon hung low in the sky, bathing the forest below in its silvery light. I gulped in the fresh air, my legs shaking as the adrenaline began to wear off. But my relief was short-lived as a mournful howl echoed through the night, reminding me that the danger was far from over. I knew I couldn't stay in one place for long. The werewolf was still out there, and its heightened senses would eventually lead it to me. With no other choice, I began to make my way down the rocky cliff face, using roots and small ledges as handholds. As I descended, my mind raced with questions. What was this creature? How long had it been terrorizing these mountains? And most importantly, how could I hope to survive until dawn? The forest below seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction, a sea of darkness punctuated by the occasional glimmer of moonlight on leaves. I had no idea which way led to safety, or if there was any safe place at all in this nightmare realm. Just as my feet touched the forest floor, a twig snapped nearby, freezing me in place. The sound of heavy breathing filled the air, and I slowly turned to see the werewolf emerging from the shadows, its eyes locked on me with predatory focus. In that moment, I knew that this was it, the final confrontation. There was nowhere left to run, no more tricks up my sleeve. It was just me, armed with nothing but a fireplace poker, against a creature of myth and nightmare. The werewolf circled me slowly, its massive form rippling with barely contained power. I held the poker before me, trying to keep it at bay, but I knew it was a futile gesture. This creature could tear me apart with a single swipe of its claws. As it lunged forward, I swung the poker with all my might, connecting with its snout. The werewolf yelped in pain and surprise, backing off momentarily, but the blow only seemed to enrage it further, and it came at me again with renewed fury. What followed was a desperate dance of survival. I dodged and weaved, using the trees as cover, striking out whenever I could with my makeshift weapon. But for every blow I landed, the werewolf's claws found purchase, tearing at my clothes and skin. I was tiring quickly, my movements becoming slower and more clumsy. The werewolf, on the other hand, seemed tireless, its attacks growing more ferocious with each passing moment. I knew that I couldn't keep this up much longer. In a last desperate move, I feinted to one side before diving between the werewolf's legs, scrambling to my feet behind it. But as I turned to run, my foot caught on a root, sending me sprawling to the ground. I rolled onto my back, holding the poker up in a final futile defense as the werewolf loomed over me. Its jaws opened wide, saliva dripping from its fangs as it prepared to deliver the killing blow. But just as I thought all was lost, a brilliant light burst through the trees, momentarily blinding both me and the creature. The werewolf howled in pain and confusion, backing away from the light. As my eyes adjusted, I realized what was happening. The sun was rising. The first rays of dawn were breaking through the forest canopy, driving back the darkness of the night. The werewolf thrashed and howled as the sunlight touched its fur. Before my disbelieving eyes, its form began to shift and change. Fur receded, claws retracted, and the bestial features melted away to reveal something even more shocking. A human face. Where the monster had stood moments before, there was now a man, naked, confused, and clearly in pain. He looked at me with wild, terrified eyes before turning and fleeing into the forest, leaving me alone in the growing light of day. I lay there for a long time, my body aching, my mind struggling to process what I had just experienced. The forest around me, which had been a realm of terror throughout the night, now seemed almost peaceful in the soft morning light. Eventually, I found the strength to stand, using the poker as a makeshift cane. I began the long, painful journey back towards civilization, knowing that my life would never be the same. As I walked, I couldn't shake the image of the werewolf's human face from my mind. Who was he? Did he know what he became under the full moon? And how many others like him were out there, hiding dark secrets in the shadows of the world? I knew that I would never look at the full moon the same way again. The night held new terrors for me now, terrors that most people would never believe. But I knew the truth, and I carried the scars, both physical and mental, to prove it. The endless mountains of Pennsylvania held a secret, a legend come to life. And though I had survived my encounter with the werewolf, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger, darker story. As I finally reached the edge of the forest, seeing the first signs of human habitation in the distance, I made a silent vow. I would tell my story even if no one believed me, because somewhere out there, in the depths of those ancient mountains, a creature of nightmare roamed. And when the full moon rose again, the hunt would begin anew.